Hey, buddy. Hi, pal. Hey. Hey, guys. It's Robert Earl out here at the Eco Ranch in Far West, Texas with Cascade the Wonder Dog who wants his hand shaken. Hey, this is my vlog for October 13th, 2016. And we're going to get into a few things I haven't gotten into as we've been moringa tree. Not going to say moringa tree today. It's cold. They're coming along fine. We'll do a separate one on them when the weather gets a bit colder. Right now, they're still growing. But I'm out here in the bathroom. Yes, I'm out here in the bathroom, guest bathroom, where we're working right now, and I'm going to show you a couple of projects here. But I do want to make a comment real quickly. I make a point of not talking about politics here because I don't want to run the risk of alienating any one person or one group over another, despite how I may feel. But I do want to tell you, based on this election that we've just had, you are probably going to see an assault on alternative energy and alternative living from the corporations. Of course, there's nobody that's going to be keeping the corporations in check right now. They're going to run rampant, and they're going to try to take away our ability to do this through incrementalization. Now, what's incrementalization? Well, let's talk Second Amendment for incrementalization. There's no way in the world that anybody is ever going to take away or repeal. I'm going to have to kill that chicken if she keeps clucking. The Second Amendment. Nobody's going to repeal it. But the Second Amendment only guarantees your right to bear arms. In other words, to own them and have them. Does not guarantee, I'm going to kill that chicken. Does not guarantee your right to own ammunition. So if they pass laws that say restrict or prohibit you from owning ammunition, essentially your gun's worthless to you. There, that took care of her. But that's incrementalization. Incrementalization can come in all kinds of different forms. You can own a pair of pants, but you can't own a belt. Now that's kind of stupid, but you get the idea. Another idea is, yes, you can have all the solar panels you want. You can connect up to the grid. You can design your own. You can create your own power. But aesthetically, solar panels on the roof, they detract away from the neighborhood. So you can't put them on the roof. You can't put them where anybody can see them. But you can have them. Well, what good are they if you can't put them, 200 degrees from due north? That's incrementalization. So come the midterms, come every election that's coming for the next 4 years, which is, again, the midterms, and the election in 4 years, take a look at who supports your right to do this. And make sure they do, because if they don't support, if they're voting for incrementalization, if they're voting to keep your neighborhood beautiful by getting rid of the wind turbines, then that's not somebody you like. So I just wanted to mention that in view of what just happened, because as we all know, man-made climate disruption is going on around us. I mean, there's so many, 97% of all the scientists in the world agree that we have man-made climate disruption going on, but we seem to have elected something in the executive branch of our government that believes that man-made climate disruption is a hoax. That doesn't help us in this kind of lifestyle, and hopefully we can deal with that. But I want to mention that, get that off my chest. Moving on, what we're going to do today is I am going to secure in masonry my hot and cold water lines for the vanity of the bathroom. The reason I have to secure these is I'm bringing the wall up, so they have to go in the wall. You can see here that I've got a piece of galvanized pipe attached to PEX. What I have taped off here is the chrome valve because I don't want to get cement or mortar on the chrome valve. So what I have to do, this is the side that the hot water line goes on. I have to get the hot water line secured right here in the wall. Up there I have to cut the PEX. Now the PEX is making the 90-degree turn, but it's not making it right, and PEX isn't really designed to curve that tightly. So I have to cut that and put a 90-degree in. We're going to do some mortar work here, and I'm going to start with my electric boxes. So let me get that stuff going. Now then, PEX is both easy and hard to work with, just like anything is. Anytime you're dealing with building materials, they've got their advantages and their disadvantages, and something that seems extremely easy has a disadvantage to it. Example was, I was watching Ask This Old House today, and the electrician had a problem with electric wires in a very old house, and he couldn't really run the wires. So what he did was he ran a chase around the top of the where the wall meets the ceiling. He ran a chase along there in the form of a plastic snap-on crown molding, that inside there they could run the wires and then just fish them down between the joists and put new outlets in. Great, absolutely wonderful idea. The downside is it's a cheap plastic crown molding. The house was old, and the ceiling had a little bit of wobble to it, so you saw a gap from, hitting the ceiling tight up to, I think I saw the biggest gap I saw was like 3/8 of an inch. So that was your negative there. Your negative to PEX, first of all, your positive is PEX essentially won't burst when it freezes. Yeah, now, I mean, if a plumber's out there, don't write me and tell, oh, yes, it can. Essentially, it won't in most cases, but there are cases that it will. So that's wonderful. It is very forgiving. It bends some, and so you can, if you've made an 1/8 of an inch error, you don't have to go cut, and come up with all these 12-degree angles and things to fix it. You just bend it over. That's your plus. Now, your negatives are that it can be hard to hold in place in some cases, and when you try to bend it on a cold day, it snaps right back into place, which is the problem I have today. It's about 50 degrees out here right now. So I had to weight these down so I could measure how high I wanted to cut. So I'm going to make the cut, and I'm going to crimp an angle on. I'm going to point you guys up at the ceiling, because I'm going to have to work at the ceiling because of these. We'll do that, and I'll be there in a second. Now then, for those of you like me that fought PEX, and the only reason I fought PEX is because I didn't learn on PVC. I actually learned on copper, sweating copper and cutting copper. I learned on copper, found out PVC was wonderful, except for, brittleness and that you can get from it. And the dogs think something's out there it isn't. So now I'm learning PEX, and I've been learning for a while. So, the problem with PEX, and I'm going to show you from way up here. Right here is the problem with PEX. Can you see that? That's a crimp ring. If you don't have a crimp ring, you're dead. You're dead. If you don't have a crimp ring, you can't do anything. If you don't have an appropriate PEX fitting, in this case a 90 and a 1/2 inch, you're dead. Now, the same could be said for PEX. The difference is this is a 24-cent fitting in 1/2 inch PVC. In PEX, it's closer to $1. It's a little more expensive, but if you don't have it, you don't have it. I mean, if you don't have the piece. So, you have to put the crimp ring over the PEX. You have to put the fitting in, and the fitting goes right in. It's very easy. Then you have to have the crimp ring and the appropriate crimping tool. And the crimp ring and the crimping tools are proprietary. In other words, if you buy an Acme crimp ring and you have a Brown Incorporated crimp ring, it's not going to work. You got to have an Acme crimp ring and an Acme tool. Now, in this case, I do have the appropriate things. The tool itself cost me about $30. And you crimp. It'll allow you to go one click so that the tool is locked. Then you make sure you set this. Crimp it the rest of the way. And that is a watertight seal. But here's another beauty of PEX. We have a waterproof seal. The angle's there. How many times, you DIY guys like Robert here, how many times have you put your PVC fitting on only to find out you're 4 or 5 degrees off? So now when you fix it, you got to put a bend that's putting tension on the fitting, and sometimes they fail. If I missed on this, I can turn this. You see me turning it here? So that, and it's still watertight. That's the beauty of this. So I'm going to go ahead right now and I'm going to do the rest of my connections. You don't have to watch me do that, but I did want to show you this and talk about the proprietary nature of things. It gets a little expensive, but you know, anymore everything has gotten expensive. And supposedly wages were supposed to go up to keep up with it, but that didn't happen too easily. Okay, I have zoomed up here to show you, because I'm a putz, I zoomed up here to show you what I had to do. Somewhere in all this mess that the chickens knock down, pick up, and carry around, I've got real nice half-inch copper clamps. Couldn't find them. I spent 15 minutes looking for them, couldn't find them. So when you, and of course, you know, it's the 130-mile round trip to a hardware store, even if they were open in today's Sunday. So I don't need it. I just needed this held in place while we mortar it. So here's a trick you can use. You can use two number 8 finishing nails, or you can use, in my case here, I think these are 12 penny nails. You just nail one in at a diagonal this way, one in at a diagonal that way, to hold it in place from moving side to side. I've still got up and down. I've still got my side to side motion down below. And I did that here to hold this in place. Just a little trick I thought I'd show you. It is redneck rigging, but nobody's going to see it. It's going to work just fine, so have I really rigged it? Probably not. But anyway, I thought I'd show you that. Now we're ready to move on to mortaring, and I've showed mortaring in other videos, but we're going to mortar these pipes into place here. I'll show you some mortaring on the bathroom wall. We got to get this bathroom done, and we have to get the bedroom next to it done, because that's where Debbie and I are going to store all the things that we've had in storage for the last 7 years, as well as what's in the building there. So let me get going on mortar. Boy, we're going to cover a lot of stuff in this for a vlog. That chicken's back. She wants to lay her egg. We're going to cover a lot of things in this vlog, and I'm sorry for that, or maybe I'm not. Maybe you all will enjoy it. But I have this joke I use with Debbie. I call it the domino effect. You can't do one thing without doing 4 other things in front of it. It's like making dominoes fall. And it's frustrating, but it's apparently it's life, because I can't get away from the domino effect. Part of the domino effect is I can't move on to my mortar because of this right here, this 4x4. Now, most of you that know construction have noticed that this whole place is being built with, essentially it's post and beam construction. In other words, the posts go into the ground, hold the roof up, with the beams, in this case, you can't see them from down there, but the headers across the top between the beams. But the beams and the posts essentially hold up the roof, and then I build up the walls underneath it. I did that because I'm not an engineer, couldn't afford to hire an engineer, and I wasn't sure if the bottle walls would be able to support the weight of the roof and themselves. So that was why I opted for that. But because of that, everywhere where the concrete, where the mortar meets the wood, whether it be a header or in this case a 4x4, you have to make sure you have a secure connection. Now, if anybody has ever tried to put mortar around vertically up a piece of wood, you know it doesn't hold very well. But they do make these things called concrete anchors. I got 1,000 of them, I think, several years ago, many years ago when we were still in Florida. And I've saved them for just this reason. They were about $50 for 1,000, so they weren't real expensive. And you can see from their shape, the mortar will go around those little notches in there and bond. And then you just simply take and screw, about every foot, foot and a half. You're going to screw the concrete anchor into the wood, like so, if I don't hurt myself, because I'm doing this from an odd position. And screw them in, bend them up. Now, if I needed more length than this, I would have put my second screw up in this hole here. Yeah, I'm bleeding. But if I use this finger, that's not too, maybe now it's going to be polite from now on, but at any rate, it wasn't polite for the first 64 years of my life. So, I could have put it here and then bent it out further, which I'll do on this side. So I have to put enough. I'm only going to be working up to, I don't think you can see this, but I'm only going to be working up about 30 inches. I probably won't even get that high today. So we're just going to take these and put them on all four sides of the beam, going up about every 18 inches. And that way the mortar will grab on and hold. It'll grab onto the metal, and the metal will hold this to the wood. And I've done that on where all of my headers, the walls meet my headers. I've dropped these concrete anchors just to hold it, to hold it in place. Now the roofs here have stood up. This section is new, but the old roof stood up to a 90-mile-an-hour gust without damaging it. We've had 58, I think, was the highest I saw here. 58-mile-an-hour winds caught this, and it held with just post and beam. So by using these to hold the beams to the concrete, we're guaranteed they're not going anywhere. I try to build, even though we don't live in Florida, I try to build to the Florida Uniform Building Code for 140-mile-an-hour wind. That's in case we get an F1 tornado that comes right by here. So hopefully I'll be back with the mortar unless I run into another domino. All right, let's secure these pipes to the mortar. And I thought I would show you that at least. I've done other videos where I've actually shown you how I place the bottles, because the process is a bit different. First of all, you can see I'm using a very wet mortar. And I experimented with using a normal mortar and, wet mortars, and the wet mortar seems to work a little better. So, other than that, it's virtually the same. Build up your corners, fill in the middle, etc. Now right here what we're going to do is we're going to build this section up and put some bottles in. That will secure, that'll hold it in place. And then I can go ahead and work the normal way. But for right now, I do have to hold these pipes in place. And for that, I ordinarily too don't go all the way across. But I am here. I'm pushing the mortar all the way across so that it grabs every bit of the galvanized. So what I'm going to need to do is have some bottles. I would say 5 of them will work. And I'm going to do just like I normally do, which is place the bottle, offset from the row below it, like this. And I put these bottles up by eye, and usually what I'll do is I'll pull them out, I'll set them out a bit, and then I'll come along with a piece of 2x4 or 2x6 and just come and make sure that they all line up to the row underneath, which these do. Now I'm ready. I've got to figure out exactly where my valve is. There's my valve. And push this down in. Now it does not want to stay. And it still doesn't. I'm going to let it move in there while I come over here to the other one. See if the other one will want to stay any better. It does not either. So we load mortar up in between. Now this is why the mortar mix is soft, so the mortar mix can be pushed right up underneath. Additionally, I point it like you would point any other mortar work you've done with regular brick or block or whatever you use. And I'm putting a very heavy layer. I'll show you in a few minutes how I do the rest of the wall, but right here I'm putting a very heavy layer on. And the key word there was heavy. The heavier it is, the more inclined it's going to be to hold my pipe in place. Okay, now these have still moved, they're not centered. Not that anyone would see, because it's going to be in the vanity underneath the sink, but like my father-in-law always says, I know. I used 5 bottles on the other row. I'm only going to use 4 on this row because we're going offsetting. Offset, 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 offset. Now that should give me a little bit more weight to try to hold this in place. But if it doesn't want to hold in place, this is a trick when you're doing any kind of rock work, bottle work, like I'm doing here. You just use a little chip of rock, and it doesn't matter how, you just kind of look at it and say, okay, what kind of chip do I need here? So you put that chip in at your pivot, or where it's trying to pivot. Now those are set, that's where we want them. Just get my board back. Another trick I use is this putty knife. This is I believe it's a 6-inch putty knife. If I take the putty knife, I don't have a bottle, oh yes I do. If I take the putty knife and I put it flat on the bottle like this, then you can see the edge goes straight up. So if I take it and put it flat on the bottle below the bottle above, then I can get them pushed into where they need to be. And there we are. Now I'm further going to put a little more weight on top. Typically with this mortar mix, it's so soft that you can't go 3 layers high. So I'm not going 3 layers high. I'm just putting the weight on here gently. And I will have to come back and move those bottles a little bit and probably push that pipe in and out as it begins to stiffen, but at least it's in place. Now I'm going to go on to the rest of the wall. Now working on the rest of the wall, I just take my mortar, and you can see I'm not as generous now because I'm not trying to hold something in place. The mortar I'm putting this on is set up for several days, so it's good and hard. So I don't need a thick layer, I just need an adhesive layer. And that's enough for my adhesive layer. Then I go back from the mortar trowel to the putty knife. And take the putty knife and just, like you were kind of decorating a cake almost, you run across. Now I've been pretty good at getting these mortar layers level by holding it in place and sliding what appears to be level across. And like I keep saying too, when you're doing this kind of work, you do have a choice between being precision, engineering it, or being artsy. And I think artsy is my kind of code word for being lazy. So you see now, there's my mortar layer. And by the way, this mortar that I'm working with right here, it's just about a perfect consistency for this. It's going to take about 12 bottles. I usually work in groups of 5, and the reason I work in groups of 5 is I can remember, well, if I took 3 trips, that's 15 bottles. And then I know for the next time. And I need one more. And I get my board. I'm going to do the board twice here. This is the first time just to make sure everything is even. I push it down. I can push this hard because this layer here is, this layer of mortar is set underneath. It's set so I'm not moving it. Then I'm going to go and I'm going to fill in. And again, this is why I use a wetter mixture. Now, bottles really, I should say mortar, really doesn't want to hold well in the bottles. And so that's another reason why you want to be a little wetter. You want to be sure you fill in every void. If you have a void in a cinder block, the cinder block, you know, it's porous. It takes up the cement and the lime. The chemical interaction actually begins with the block as well as with the wet mortar. Here, there is no chemical reaction. So here, it's very important we fill every void. Fill every void. This is why I go back now, as opposed to buttering each bottle like you would if you were doing bricks. Fill each void. Come back. And spread. Now as I'm spreading here, what you can't see is I'm putting extra pressure on to push it down in. Now that's down in. I'm scraping up here because obviously I'm going to be working from that part next. And get myself in the eye. I push this back a little bit on this edge because I come back and point, and as I'm pointing I expose about 1/4 inch to 3/8 of an inch of every bottle, so the bottles pop at you like you can see all the other bottles do. All I'm going to do is repeat here as I can. Hopefully I can get to do the electric today. In about 3 hours, I'm going to do one more mixer load of mortar for today, but I was able to get up to do part of the electrical, and that's why I wanted to stop and show you. There's a difference in the 2 walls I'm working on. This wall here is a single bottle wall, and I did this just so I could show people, hey, this is what it would look like if you did a single bottle wall. Most of my walls are double. The bottoms are, the necks are facing in and the bottoms are facing out, and then the gap is anywhere from, you know, a couple inches to really to 2.5, 3 feet. Now the wall over here, which is the one that you saw me putting the concrete anchors in the 4x4, this wall is a double wall, but on the inside, I have the bottoms of the green beer bottles facing inside the wall. On the outside, I'm doing it in rock, and I'll get back to that in a couple minutes. But at any rate, this is a single wall. Now, because it's a single wall, I had to do the electric a little different here than I would do in the double wall, and that is all the electric runs through conduit. Now, I'm just doing that because it just gives it a little bit more stability. If by chance the wall cracks and moves like that, it can shear, and this gives it a little bit of play. I don't think the wall is going to crack or move, but I have had them do it, and 2 of the walls have done that. So, moving my hat, I bring the PVC out. You can see this one's already embedded in the wall. I dropped it That's a 240 volt outlet going out. The other one goes on to another 240 outlet going out, as well as a 110 outlet down out here. Now these are the two that are going to be just above the vanity. The vanity height is 34 inches. And again, I better get into that too. Vanities go anywhere from 29 inches to 36 inches depending on the people. Typically they're 32 and a half, I understand. Now Debbie and I, we fiddled around with it a bit and we decided that the top of our vanity, in other words, once we put the vanity in and the countertop on, that top we want 34 inches above the floor. So I'm putting my boxes so that they'll be above that 34 inches. The vanity is going to extend roughly from around here, go around the corner over to that 4x4. So I had to run the electric boxes. So I've already set this one in concrete, in mortar. This one has to be leveled up as I bring this next up, the next layer up. I'll level this so they're even. The mortar will, of course, hide the conduit. And then it'll be here and be ready for when we get the countertop on. But I did want to show you how I had to run it so that you could at least get an idea of that. Now over here, and let me turn the camera here. Now over here on this wall, which is the one where we put the plumbing in, just going to come off the back here. This will go right through the center of the wall, and then I'm putting a box on the outside, on this side of the sink, and a box on this side of the sink, and that's fairly simple, just the way you'd run it through a normal wall, except it's going through this. I'll get into the construction of this wall in a minute, but I just wanted to show you that. I'll get back to work. Well, folks, it's the end of the day. I have finished for the day, except I did have one more thing I wanted to go over with you, and I'll explain that right now. Now, you may have noticed rather, that I was taking the bottle wall here up higher than the rock wall down there. And I explained this in another video. I'm going to come around here and tell you. I had explained this in another video about how you actually build a rock wall. And the way you really build a rock wall is you're building two walls. You're building one rock wall here and one rock wall here, or however wide you want it. And you're filling in between with you know, dirt, gravel, rock, debris. In our case here, because some of our walls are up to 3 feet thick, I'm filling in with anything I can. Empty beer cans, any kind of garbage I've got. If it's bio, if I can't burn it, it's going to go in between the walls here somewhere. Now I also have a couple of tons of that cat litter, that bentonite clay too. That in this wall, particularly this wall, I'm going to be pouring it in and it fills up everything because it's granulated. But here's something I got and I wanted to tell you about. I actually used this kind of stuff along with those popcorn styrofoam, not popcorn, but styrofoam popcorn peanuts or whatever you want to call them, to insulate the first building we built. I insulated the ceiling with that. It was perfect. But we had our refrigerator fail, and I had to buy a new refrigerator. And I actually had to buy 2 smaller refrigerators to replace the one giant one because they were cheaper. They use a little more power, but since I don't pay an electric bill, it didn't matter. But they came with these styrofoam things to protect the side and on the bottom. Well, then what do you do with them? I really don't want to burn them because it puts out stuff in the air, even though China doesn't seem to care. So what do you do with it? Well, it's very simple with this. It's easy to break. You just jam them here in between the wall. Now I'm getting out of camera here, but this wall's about well, it's actually 40. Bleh. I'll spit it out yet, I promise. It's actually 28 feet wide. And so I don't have that much, of course, styrofoam. Just put the styrofoam in like this, and you can pretty much see. If I put the styrofoam in here, let's grab a rock. Oh, down here I'm not going to use a rock this small, but then I fill in with the bentonite, I fill it up so that it's level, and the rock will sit. If it doesn't want to sit, you put a little rock chip under it to make it sit, which it won't do for me because I've got the camera turned on. But anyway, there. Put your mortar in, use a rock chip, whatever. Build it up one row, then you fill it with bentonite clay or beer cans or whatever. I don't need this for insulation, but it certainly doesn't hurt because this is an outside wall. What I actually need these for is just to get rid of them in a way that they're sequestered. So putting them in the wall along with any other garbage I've got is great. It does give me a little more insulation value. The climate that we have here is actually perfect for just having an earthen wall, and the heat comes through in the daytime, cold comes through at night. And the transference is just about right for our climate here to keep us nice and keep us comfortable. Same thing they did in the Middle East 8,000 years ago, Yemen in particular. Same thing they developed there. It's nothing new, nothing I invented. So I just wanted to tell you that, and I am done. Let me get behind the camera for a second and show you the finished, not finished, but the finished for today wall. Put this somewhere where the chickens don't eat it. Now it is getting a bit dark in here, but you can see what's wet, what's really, really dark is what I did today. Now there's the hot and cold water fittings. They're chrome, and I said I wrapped them in duct tape, but before I wrapped them in duct tape, I wrapped them in just those plastic grocery bags that you get, and then I put the duct tape on the grocery bag, because that glue on the back of duct tape, if it gets on certain things, it's just miserable to get off. So I protected it that way. Then over here, we've got the fixtures in. They're both level, although they may not look it to your eye. It's an illusion. I actually put the level on the top of them. They're level and flush where they need to be. And I brought the wall up. I think I brought the wall up 4 bottles, roughly. I hid the... as you can see, I hid the conduit coming out here. And once this is dry, we'll be all set to wire it up. I'm not, of course, not going to wire it up right now, but I'm all set to wire it up. And then I'll have on my vanity, I'll have 2 plugs here. I'll have a plug here, a plug on the other side of the vanity. And just have a normal bathroom, a nice bathroom all made out of beer bottles, all recycled stuff. So with that, I guess we're done for the day. And there's nothing to do now except go and get a beer, but I thought I'd tell you this. Debbie and I had made a mistake back here. And we made this error, and we couldn't fix it, so we just had to put a corner, or a rounded corner, where we didn't really want a rounded corner. For some reason, it got me thinking about when when Debbie and I were on that TV show, Doomsday Preppers. I don't know if any of you saw it. It's not worth watching. But we were on that show, Doomsday Preppers, and they set up to do a shot. And their light guy had these big, big old lights on there. I don't know what he did. He did something wrong, but he turned. We did the whole shot, got the whole shot set up, and he did turn something on. The lights went kafooey. The lights went out, took out my inverters, didn't blow them out. They just, the circuit breakers in them took off. We had to reset. We had to reset up, do the whole shot all over again. Well, Debbie and I couldn't reshoot this. Once we did it, we were done. And I was thinking, I talked in the very beginning about incrementalism in politics, and how it could sneak in and it could affect your lifestyle or your ability to work like this. It could affect a lot of things. It could affect the ammunition you buy for your gun. It could affect your health care. It could affect anything. So we have to be real careful and look at every piece of legislation and every person that's going to ask for your vote, because if they incrementalize this way of life away from us, we're going to end up being slaves to them. And like Debbie and I found out, we were lucky. We found out that reality TV, where they can reshoot everything, isn't like real life. You can't reshoot. You don't get a second take. You don't get a do-over. If you make a mistake, it's a big league mistake in a bigly way. Trust me, folks. So until the next video, this is Robert Earl out here at the Eco Ranch in Far West Texas saying, see you later.